Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Mark.
My name is Mark Kreiner. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Mark.
By the grace of God, I'm sober. And for that, I'm most grateful. I would like to thank Patty, who didn't ask me to speak tonight, and Nasser, who filled in for Patty, who didn't ask me to speak tonight. And I'm actually filling in this evening for Wayne Butler. I know I don't look like Wayne. Well, a little bit, except for the hair. And actually, Wayne and I were speaking at a convention in Seattle this weekend. And last night when we were in Seattle, he received a phone call that his daughter in Chicago, one of his daughters in Chicago, was in a bad motorcycle accident, and she's in a coma. So he asked if I'd fill in tonight. I told him no, that I was busy, I had a date. And here I am. Hey, man, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. If you stick around here long enough, you too will have things change too, you know. But so tonight I hope that when they have a moment of silence, I hope you put Wayne's daughter in your prayers tonight. She's clinging to life, and so I'm your speaker tonight. Oh well. Like I said, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. My primary purpose is to stay sober, carry the message, and have fun. And I'd like to welcome all our new friends to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'd like to pass the message that was so freely given to me when I came into the rooms 18 years, 3 months, and 12 days ago. And that was a fact he told me, Mark. He said, you don't ever have to pick up a drink if you choose not to, a day at a time. And that's really my message tonight. What I'll try and do for our new friends of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm going to try to share my own experience of what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. It's been my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous that when I share my opinions, people drink. So take what you want, leave the rest behind, you know what I mean? But I'm convinced that, it's been a wild day for me. I've just been like one step short all day today, you know, after coming back from rainy Seattle. And, you know, I believe alcoholics like me get more out of the average day. I've been running around all day, and I went to the store because I had nothing in my refrigerator. And if you're new in here, you might be able to relate to this. I was in a rush, and now that I've been sober for a short period of time, I try to be responsible and be an example out in public, you know. So I wanted to make sure I had less than 10 items. And so I counted my items real carefully, you know what I mean? I had 8. Now I'm 6'4", and when I stand in line, you know, especially when I get guys like my little buddy over here, Mike, you know what I mean? I get to see in front of everybody, you know? And what I start doing is I start counting. Now, I want to let you know that depending upon how much of a rush I'm in, you know, a 6-pack of Coke is either 1 or 6. And somebody had a 6-pack today, and I was in a rush. And so my head just went off, you know, and I was prepared to just go strangle this person. I mean, I just wanted to grab them by their throat, put them up by the sign, and just tell them, can't they read, you know? No one has any idea what's going on in this fine piece of machinery up here. And by the time that I paid for my groceries, man, I was ready to go home and go back into bed. I was exhausted just with what went on in those 3 minutes, you know? And if you're new in here tonight and you have any doubt about your mind, because I believe that alcoholism is an allergy of the body coupled an obsession of the mind with a spiritual malady, you know, and the allergy's been a rest for quite a while in my life, but the obsession is live. And if you have any doubt about your mind and you're new here tonight, think about this. Right now, if the person sitting next to you thought the things that you thought about yourself, you'd have no choice but to shoot them. You know what I mean? And I love Alcoholics Anonymous. My primary purpose is to stay sober, carry the message, and have a lot of fun. And fun I do have in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's so nice to be here tonight and see friends like Mike and Jimmy and Nasser and just a lot of people that, you know, this is like my home. This is where I got sober here. I've been to a lot of meetings here in the last 18 years, usually on Saturday and Sunday at noon. That's my seat. You better not sit in it. And And you know, and it's so nice, you know, it's so nice and refreshing, you know, when Wayne and I, these people in Seattle had no idea what they were getting with Wayne and I speaking at their convention, because we're nuts, you know, and Wayne and I both love to have a good time, and we asked, we sat in this, I spoke Friday, Wayne spoke Saturday, and then we had a panel that they had the speakers who answered questions, and one of the questions was, why do most of the speakers come from Los Angeles to speak at conventions, you know? And our response was, because we're nuts. We're just nuts, you know, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous in Southern California, especially West LA. It saved my life. I got to let you know that that I love to drink alcohol. I love to drink alcohol. I love the effect alcohol has on me. I like to drink the good stuff. I like to drink peppermint schnapps and Dom Perignon mixed, and I have a very unusual effect that alcohol has on me, probably a lot different than you. What I do when I drink, it's kind of like what the news broadcasts have been saying lately, like rolling blackouts, you know, and and what happens for me is that when I drink, I get drunk and I, you know, roll, and but strange things happen when I drink alcohol, like for some reason my pants drop, you know, they just do. Shirts stay on, shoes stay on, but I just drop my pants. There's just something about me and drinking and dropping my pants, and that tends to be a little embarrassing, especially in the position I was in at the time, involved the entertainment business. You know, it's pretty embarrassing when you're sitting at an award show and you and you receive an award, but you're in the bathroom with your pants down because you're drunk. You know, it's wild. You know, I grew up in Sherman Oaks, and I came from a wonderful family, and we didn't have much money. You know, Clancy I talks about a disease of perception, and I got to tell you that I also suffer from that disease too. What you say is not what I hear, and I remember growing up in Sherman Oaks, and what I heard my father tell me was, you know, Mark, you're a failure, man. You're never going to make it. You better marry a rich woman, and what my father said to me was, maybe you should get an education, son. And I just think a little different than most people. So what happened was I was on this mission that I knew that if I could just make $1 million, my life would be perfect, you know. So I was out to prove to my family that I could make $1 million. So I was driving my mother's car one day, and you've got to understand the setting that I shared a bedroom with my kid sister. I mean, it's a very humbling thing to do when you're 16, to go home and share a bedroom with your kid sister. And so what happened, I was driving my car, my mother's car, and I had real long, when I had hair, I had real long hair. And I looked like this guy from this rock group. And I remember this girl pulling next to me and rolling down her window and asking me to roll mine down. And she said, "Are you the guy from 3 Dog Night?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And you know what? It just felt right, you know? And I signed my first autograph, and it was just great. It was great. And so I did what I thought every rock and roll star does. I went to the DMV at that time. They just started personalized license plates, and for $25 you could get anything you wanted. So I got 3 Dog NT, and I slapped it on my mother's car, 3 Dog Night. And I got stopped a lot and signed a lot of autographs, you know. And I had no idea this guy at the time was also living in the valley with his wife, you know. And I mean, there are a lot of wonderful people in Alcoholics Anonymous that are very musically inclined. Well, I'm not one of them. You know what I mean? And somehow I almost ended up on stage performing as this guy, and I had to stop, you know. And I had to retire. I got to tell you, at 16, I retired from being a rock and roll star, and that's enough to make you drink right there. But I continued on. I had a lot of wild journeys, you know. The amazing part for me is the fact that I never got pulled over for drunk driving or under the influence of anything. It wasn't until I was a year and a half sober that I got pulled over for drunk driving in the Marina, and I failed the test. I mean, it's insane, you know what I mean? I just failed the test, and I also never hit anything when I was driving. And 3 weeks after I got pulled over for drunk driving, and that the guy knew I wasn't drunk, even though I failed one of the tests. I hit a fire hydrant, you know what I mean? And it's just wild. But I got to tell you that what happened for me, which is a big part of my life, is I ended up at the right place at the right time and got the right break, and I ended up in the record business. And I signed a group, and before I knew it, 6 months later, I made $1 million. Now I'm here to tell you tonight that if money would keep you sober, I would not be your speaker here tonight, nor would I be in AA. Believe me, this was not my plan 18 years, 3 months, and 12 days ago to be here on a Sunday night speaking in an AA meeting. Just wasn't my #1 choice. And what happened was I proceeded to go on and have a lot of success and made millions of dollars and received a lot of awards and recognition and was on a lot of TV shows and talk shows, and my life was all about money, see, because that's all I had been brought up to be thinking. My thoughts were money, 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 just buy it, you know, and that's what I did. And when, you know, it didn't work, I bought it again, and then I just kept buying and buying and buying. And how I ended up in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous is a miracle. I had a misunderstanding with the FBI about 3 months before I got sober, and they told me that if I didn't share some information with them, they were going to follow me around for the next period of time, 24 hours a day. So I said, okay, that's fine. Now, you got to understand, at the time, I had 2 armed security guys that traveled with me because I was a VIP. At least in my head I was. And as I stand here tonight, I'm convinced that there's a higher power that was overlooking you more than me, because of those 2 security guys, I'm here to tell you there wasn't a single person that was after me. And in turn, what happened is I'm convinced that God was protecting you from me by having those guys around, because I was a nut. And what finally happened is I got to the point that I needed some help, and someone suggested there's a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, so I decided to do what I do best, and I decided to come to AA to buy it. And I walked into a room to buy AA. That was my intention. I came here armed with my 2 security guys that were dressed like I am tonight with guns. I've later learned that it's strongly suggested when you come in the rooms of AA, do not come here with guns. Freaks people out. And I had my Aloha shirt, my sweatpants, and those eyes that looked like I had just been thrown out going 400 miles an hour on the 405 freeway, not knowing how you knew that I was new. And sat in the Dermody Get Sober section in the back. One guy sat next to me, and the other guy stood by the door, and there weren't too many people that wanted to come up and put their hand out to me. You know what I'm saying? And I remember asking somebody, you know, who's the head of who's the head here? You know, and they told me, come back tomorrow. He'll be here. And so I came back the next day to buy AA, and I was really baffled, and one of those same guys was at the same meeting, you know, and I asked again. I said, well, when's the main guy coming in here, because I'm here to do some talking about some business. And the guy said, I promise you, if you come tomorrow, you'll meet him. So I came with my security guys the 3rd day. On the 3rd day, I got tapped on the shoulder, and I figured this must be the president of AA, because they sent the negotiator up. And this is the guy that counts people's items on lines. And so what happened is I got tapped on the shoulder, and all of a sudden some guy said to me, hey. And I said, hey. And I'm a big guy, you know, and when I'm detoxing, you don't want to get next to me, believe me. I'm just a nut. And the guy said to me, he said, hey, you know, we knew a nut like you was coming down the pike last week, and we had a drawing for sponsorship, and I lost. I'm your sponsor. And I had no idea what that was, but I figured he was the president. I was going to listen to what he said. I'm so grateful that I had the willingness to take direction from another sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember Al telling me, he said, you know, tomorrow night we're going to go to Santa Barbara, and the next night we went to another city, and the next night we went to another city. And I remember turning to Al and saying, Al, you're the only guy who speaks in AA? He said, I'm the only guy you need to listen to, so shut up. And that was my way of getting into Alcoholics Anonymous with the sponsor. And we went to a meeting one night. There were a lot of sayings on the wall, as they are here, and you know, if you go to an Alano club, you'll notice that there's a lot of signs that say easy does it, all the little signs. Well, there was a sign Al said that's missing. I said, what's that? He said, we need to create a new one just for you. And I said, what is that? He said, get in the car and shut up. And then the greatest thing happened for me my first week of sobriety. I still had 2 security guys with me and 2 FBI agents who were following me. And then what I heard Al tell me was, this is what I heard Al say. On Friday night, I'm going to take you to Rodeo Drive. You're going to meet the most beautiful girl of your dreams, and you're going to marry her. You're going to finally meet the woman who's going to have your children, you know? That's what I heard Al say. What Al said was, Friday, leave your clowns at home, we're going to a meeting. So Friday came, and I wanted to look real good for that meeting because Al told me, that's what I heard, that where I was going to meet my wife that night. And now you got to understand that I was involved with the disco era. I discovered the majority of music that you guys dance to if you're old enough. And now disco was 5 years dead by the time I got to AA. But I want to let you know I'm still styling with disco clothes, you know what I mean? Now, you got to understand that I'm 6'4", but when I wear my high disco shoes, I'm 7'3". And if any of you remember the old disco, the pants were just a little short, you know what I mean? And the jackets were just like a little bright, and they had a lot of pockets. And so Al honked, I went downstairs, and he just cracked up. And he wouldn't tell me what he was laughing about. And we went over to Rodeo Drive, and as in this meeting, and a lot of meetings, there's some greeters, in the front, and they welcome you. Well, every time Al walked in front, I walked behind, they just started cracking up, these greeters, you know what I mean? And Al told me that because I was a VIP, see, I knew Al read a story about me. Al said, you look like a VIP. And Al told me that he had made a call ahead of time to tell him that a VIP was coming to the meeting, so we were going to sit in the very front row, And I knew Al was the president. I just knew it. I just knew when they sent him over to me, he was the head guy. And because Al knew everybody. I just knew he was the president. So I sat in the very front row of Rodeo Drive, dressed in my disco outfit, styling with those eyes. First week of sobriety, and now I got to let you know that I had my first spiritual awakening in Alcoholics Anonymous at that meeting. They read chapter 5 that was beautifully read tonight, and they had a speaker like they have this evening, and I didn't hear a single thing that evening because I was just cruising the room with my eyes, and I was confused because there were so many pretty girls, and if you're an alcoholic like me, you get confused when you have choices. You want them all, and so what happened for me is that the break came, and that's when I had my first spiritual awakening. All of a sudden, all these men came up to me. Now, I got to let you know that I respect wherever you're coming from, but my interpretation of coming into AA, starting a new way of life, was not getting men's phone numbers. It just wasn't it for me. And these men started giving me their phone numbers, and they would tell me, well, you can call me any time of the night. I said, I don't think so. When I drink, I love to talk, but to girls, you know what I mean? And then they were saying silly things to me like, we can go have some coffee. What are you, crazy? And the guys in AA will trick you, by the way. If you're new here, I'm going to tell you that. Because as you turn this way and you're wearing a disco jacket, they stick their number in your pocket this way. And if you turn this way and talk to them, they'll stick their number in your pocket this way. So I walked out of that meeting. I didn't even see a woman within 50 yards. And we're walking out of the meeting, Al and I, and I've got these pocket full of men's phone numbers, and I throw them all in the trash. Now, that's not a good thing to do when you've got Al as your sponsor. Not good. So Al, on the way home, said, well, I'm a little worried about you. He said, do you have the willingness to stay sober? Now, let me explain something to you. What Al told me as we were driving to Rodeo that night, he said, I just want to tell you something, Mark. He said, AA is the bottom of the pit. If you don't make it here, you're in deep trouble. Now, I didn't want to get kicked out of AA until I bought it. So I didn't want to do anything wrong, And so what happened for me is Al asked me if I was teachable. I said, yes, I am. He said, well, my suggestion is when you get up tomorrow morning, do what you normally do, say your prayers, make your bed, and call me. So I thought that was easy. The next morning, woke up, said my prayers, had my house staff make my bed, called Al. That was a bad thing to do. So I called Al and told him, and I repeated the whole situation. He said, well, tell me again. I said, well, I got up, said my prayers, they made my bed. He said, oh my God. I said, what's the matter? He said, the wrong guy is going to stay sober. So I said, I'll call you right back. I hung up, jumped back into my bed, jumped out, said my prayers, made my own bed, and called Al, and then he went, ha, 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 and hung up on me. And I love Alcoholics Anonymous. And my primary purpose is stay sober, carry the message, and have fun. And so, in Alcoholics Anonymous, they have 12-step work. And that's, Al's on this list years ago to go on 12-step calls at any time of the night. And Al used to like calling me, for some reason, all hours of the night. And we'd go on these 12-step calls. And Al used to say, traditionally, Mark, when we go on 12-step work trying to put our hand out to another alcoholic who needs us, we take 2 people, minimum. He said, but with you, we're going to take 3. And I said, why? He said, because I got to have one watch you. You know, and for all you guys that know Al, you can understand. I mean, he's a trip. I love my sponsor. And we used to go on these 12-step calls, and what would happen is the drunk would talk, Al would talk. The next guy would talk, the drunk would talk. I would talk, the drunk would puke on me. And I'd wear my best disco clothes when I went on 12-step calls, you know. And one time I went for the guy's throat, and Al told me we don't do that in AA. And so I was barred from doing 12-step work for 5 years, but I'm back on it again, and I love it. And if you're new here tonight, I want to tell you something about Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but AA, and I love AA. I came in here and stayed in here. And if you're new here tonight, I want to let you know that if you stay sober between now and the time you go to sleep, and I stay sober, we'll have today. I have no more and no less time than anyone standing or sitting in this room right now. What I do have is a few more days and hours strung together, knowing picking up a drink is not going to solve a single thing for me. But for the first time in my life, it was real nice to know that when I entered the rooms of AA, I became an equal. And if you're back with us tonight, I welcome you back here. But I want to let you know that Alcoholics Anonymous, in my opinion, told you I'd try to stick to my own experience, Alcoholics Anonymous is a very bizarre organization. It just is. Because it's the only organization I know in the world. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that we'll go to the most sordid areas in the city to pick you up. We'll go to a rat-infested hotel if you have the desire to stop drinking. I also know from my own experience that if you rob a bank and you don't drink, we'll ask you to be one of our convention speakers. You know what I mean? However, if you have a cellular phone or a pager and it goes off at a meeting, we're ready to strangle you. You know what I mean? Alcoholics are just a little rigid without alcohol in their system. And but I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I want to let you know about my first year of sobriety because it's such an important part of my sobriety and my life, really, is the fact that I was trudging the road, working through the 12 suggested steps, the tools with my sponsor, and I was coming up on my year of sobriety, and I still had those FBI agents who were following me to meetings, and it was a wild journey. And so what happened is I did something which is really not really not suggested, and that is I decided to make another amends without checking with my sponsor, and that was I had an outstanding amends with the IRS. And so as I told you when I came in here a multimillionaire on the outside and a dead man on the inside, which is a bad combination. So I decided, well, what I'll do is 1 week before my 1-year AA birthday, I figured, well, I hadn't lied once in 11 months, and that's a lie. And so I put everything I had in my name into this guy's name, and then I called my sponsor. Well, I didn't call my sponsor. I called him afterwards. But what happened is I called the IRS and said, I'm ready to meet with you. And I met with the IRS and told them I had nothing, and they were very respectful of me for being so honest. And I went back to my buddy after it was all done, and I said, okay, I'm ready for my stuff. He said, what stuff? And I want to let you know that if you're new here tonight or you decide to go back out and drink again, that you lose the right to threaten people when you have FBI agents that are following you 24 hours a day. And so I remember calling my sponsor up, and I said, hey, Al, you'll never believe this one. I've got no money, no car, no home, and I've got a police-trained German Shepherd, Max, who's worth more than I am. Now what do? He said, go to a meeting, help one of God's kids, and God will take care of you. And he hung up on me. And that's not what I wanted to hear about, God's kids and going to a meeting. Believe me. So what happened for me was I went to a meeting, and there was a guy that I was sponsoring for about 17 days, you know, and he said that Max and I could sleep on his couch. Well, Max was 110 pounds at the time, so he kicks in the middle of the night, so I ended up on the floor half the time, you know. But I want to tell you about Alcoholics Anonymous and the power of the fellowship in my life. When I came in here, people loved me unconditionally. And one more time, when there I was 1 week before my 1-year AA birthday, boy wonder, multi-millionaire, gold records, private jet, with nothing. But I had something that I found out nobody can take from me any longer. And that was my self-respect, my dignity, my pride, and most importantly, my sobriety. And the only person that took it this time was me if I picked up the first drink. And the fellowship called me up, and people asked me, can we take you to a meeting? Can we take you to dinner? Can we feed you? I mean, no one asked me who I was dating, where I was living, what I was driving. I mean, from my own experience, the fellowship has never let me down. And that's for 18 years, 3 months, and 12 days by God's grace and your love. And I want to let you know that I took that cake with some self-respect when I took a year. But I did learn something that I no longer do, and that is the fact I no longer talk about my car, my job, or my dates. I talk about God's car, God's money, and God's dates. Because anytime I talk about mine, I lose it. When I talk about God's, I have it as long as I'm supposed to have it. And I believe for me, coincidence is the long form of spelling God. And it was a coincidence of everything that started to happen in my life from that day forward. I also got to let you know, too, that I love taking pills. I love pills. I did a lot of non-AA approved chemicals, but pills were my favorite. And I'll tell you why I like pills, because doctors used to give them to me, and on the outside of the prescription, how it read was my name, and it said, take as needed. So I did. I just needed a lot. And so what happened for me is, as what happens for people in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm no different than anybody else, is the fact the stuff on the outside started coming back. And but for the first time I knew that I was a billionaire, because it's how I felt about myself. See, when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I came in for two purposes. I came in to start learning how to live and to buy it. And in turn, what's happened is that my life has completely changed, and I'm just not the same guy I am, that I wasn't, that I'm a different guy. And remember, I'm not supposed to be your speaker tonight. And but anyway, I want to let you know that I learned about resentment in Alcoholics Anonymous too. You know, I've had the opportunity to sponsor a lot of men in AA. I sponsor a lot of men in AA because my sponsor sponsors a lot of men, and I want what he's got. And when the guys that I sponsor end up calling me, it's always about her or money. And I always tell the guys that I sponsor that, you know, if you leave the word bitch out when you're talking to your wife or girlfriend, it might be a little easier, you know what I mean? And and I also remind the guys about, you know, the package that their girls are getting with us. I mean, I don't know about anyone in this room, but I'm not playing with a full deck, you know what I mean? And if you think you are, keep coming back, you know what I mean? More will be revealed to you. So what happened is this guy called me up, and I did something which is real crazy. And that is the fact I was married in a blackout. And when we both woke up previous to getting sober, we decided not to be with each other, you know? And then I ran into her in sobriety. And I decided one more time to go out and date her again. Now that's nuts. That's absolutely sick. And we went out, we dated, and we didn't like each other. And but one of these guys I was sponsoring was married to a well-known superstar actress. He was an actor, and I'd been sponsoring for 3 years. And he told me, he said, you know, I got to tell you something. I said, well, what can the guy tell me, you know? And he said, well, you know, your ex-wife? I said, yeah. He said, well, she's very nice. I said, thank you. He said, no, well, I think she's really, really nice. I said, well, thank you. And he said, well, I got to tell you something. I said, okay. He said, well, I'm in love with her. I said, oh, that's great. So what else? He said, well, I'm going to marry her. I said, okay, I'll call you right back. And I called Al up. And I told Al, I said, you won't believe this one, but the guy that I'm sponsoring is going to marry my ex-wife, and he's married. What do you think about that? You know what Al said? And he hung up on me. So I called Al back. I said, what's that all about? He said, buddy, you can't have a resentment. I said, what do you mean I can't have a resentment? I hate this guy. I said, no, no, no. He said, for you to have a resentment is for you to drink. I said, okay, well, what do you suggest I do? And he said, well, first of all, how does it feel to have someone live rent-free in your head? And I said, oh, that's great, Al. That's just wonderful. He said, well, let me tell you my suggestion. My suggestion is when you go home tonight, pray for the guy. But pray good for night and day about his health, his happiness, and his new relationship with your ex-wife. He said, if you don't do that for 2 weeks, you're going to get drunk. I said, okay, I'll do it. Now, I don't know about you, and I respect anybody in this room, but I want to tell you, I went home, and about an hour later, I prayed for him to die. And then the next day, I prayed for him to drink. And the next week, I prayed for him to drink. And it took me 6 months to get 2 weeks. It just did. You know, I did the best I could do. Well, after 6 months, after I made it 2 weeks praying for success in his life, he got married. He married my ex-wife. And then 9 months later, they got divorced. Oh, well. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. So anyway, meanwhile, what happened for me is my first 2.5 years, I had FBI agents who were following me to meetings. And after 2.5 years, the FBI agents stopped following me. So what happened was after 2.5 years, I took a 30-day chip off FBI agents like you took a 30-day chip off alcohol. And what happened for me is that after about, God, it must have been I was coming up on 5 years sober, and I got a phone call from the FBI. And I don't know about you, but for me, with the FBI, when you get a call from the FBI, it's a very frightening feeling. And but my fine piece of machinery told me that what they really want is that they're... How are you tonight? Good. Good, thank you. FBI agent, plant. I know it, man. I've been sober 18 years, man. I can spot them a mile away. Yes, sir. So anyway, my fine piece of machinery told me that what's going to happen here is that the FBI is having a national convention on alcoholism. They want me to be their keynote speaker. So that wasn't the case. What happened was they told me I had been indicted and I faced 50 years in prison. And it's all right. Keep coming back. Okay. So what happened? So what happened for me was I was faced with 50 years in prison. They told me another coincidence happened. They told me they came to pick me up that evening or that morning, and they couldn't find me. And so what I did is they asked me if I turned myself in. I said absolutely. So I called Al up at work. It was a Tuesday morning. I said, Al, you'll never believe this one. He said, buddy, anything you tell me, I'll believe. I said, I've just been indicted and I faced 50 years in prison. What do I do? You know what my sponsor, loving, unconditional, loving sponsor said to me? Don't call me, call your attorney. And he hung up on me. But I've been taught in Alcoholics Anonymous, call your sponsor no matter what. And so anyway, I turned myself into Westwood, and I want to let you know, if you're new here tonight, if you ever want to know when you're going to give your best pitch in AA, it's in the back seat of a federal car. They told me, they took me downtown. They said the case was too big, and what was happening was that they had to find out what my bail was going to be. And we were driving downtown in the backseat of the federal car. I had these two agents that had been following me for 2.5 years that hadn't seen me for 2.5 years. They said, we're not going to handcuff you. We're going to take our guns out. And as soon as we pulled out of the federal building, the first thing they said to me was, God, Mark, you look great. What have you been doing the last 2.5 years? So I told them in a general way what it was like, in a general way, what happened. And then we got down to federal court, and they said, now we have to handcuff you. And I said, that's what it's like today. And I walked into federal court, and what happened for me was that in one side, I walk in the court, I'm handcuffed, I've got two deputies on both sides of me. I walk in, and on the left side of my eye, who do I see? Al and 6 knuckleheads from AA. Now, I want to let you know, I don't know about you, but when we get together as a group, we do not look like the PTA, you know what I mean? And the federal judge said, who are these gentlemen in the back? And bless my sponsor's heart, he stood up and he said, my name's Al and I'm an alcoholic. I said, oh, no. And I'm his sponsor. And another coincidence, based on Al and those 6 knuckleheads, they let me out on my own. Now I want to let you know this was a national case. They made the evening news. It was, I mean, we alcoholics do things in a big way. And just by coincidence, long form of spelling God, my indictment, my 50-year indictment was a 12-page indictment. 12 pages. So I get all these phone calls. People are calling me. I'm looking forward. 3 key reasons why I'm blessed and have the opportunity to be your speaker tonight. 1, I have a sobriety date, know it. 2, I have a home group. And 3, I have a sponsor. And I was looking forward to going to my home group the next day. And all of a sudden, I get up the next morning. I get a call from one of those FBI agents, Dave. And Dave says, I was very impressed with your story last night. I have a problem with cigarettes. Could you take me to one of your meetings tonight? This is the FBI agent who had just arrested me. So I called Al up. I said, you will never... I was cracking up. I said, Al, this guy, this FBI agent wants me to take him to a meeting. What do I do? He said, take him. And he hung up on me. I was driving to Westwood. I called Al up. I said, Al, I know for sure it's a setup. The guy's name is Dave. If they kill me tonight, his name is Dave. Sue him. And so I get to the federal building. There's Dave in that same car with the little red light on the dash going like this. I'm almost 5 years sober. I tried to get him in my car. I went with Dave. And Dave said to me, are you hungry? I said, up, here it comes. I said, yes, I am. He said, well, why don't we get a bite to eat? So I figured it's a setup. I go into this restaurant with Dave. I'm sitting with Dave. It can't be any more than 2 minutes. And Dave, the FBI agent who just arrested me yesterday, by the way, I want you to know how unethical it is for an FBI agent to call you, let alone to hang out with you after you've been indicted, man. I mean, they can lose their case. So I'm like totally confused, and I'm sober, you know, and I want to drink. Because what those people accused me of, I did. And I knew I was in trouble. And this is something that took place 3 years previous of me getting sober. That's 8 years earlier. That's how far it followed me into sobriety. And all of a sudden, we're there 2 minutes, and Dave starts to cry. For sure I want to drink, you know. And I tell, and my mind says, why are you crying? I'm going to go to prison, and you're prosecuting me, and you're crying? That's what my head said. And then what came out of Dave's mouth were those words that we just hear so many times around the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. He said to me, he said, you know, Mark, he said, I was very impressed with your story last night, or yesterday. He said, I've been on the force for 29 years. I've got 1 more year to go before I retire. I'm an alcoholic. I can't stop drinking. Will you help me? And my head said, no! Are you nuts? Drink, die, and then you can't testify, and we'll talk about it after my case, but drink now. Don't stop now. Of course, what I said was to be an honor and a privilege. So now I got a major problem. I got Dave, the newcomer, and Dave, the FBI agent who arrested me, going to my home group meeting that's 300 strong. Now Dave looks like an FBI agent. He walks like he is an FBI agent. You know what I mean? That's why I love coming to AA at night. Do you ever notice when you come into AA at night and you ask someone how their day was and they say fine, you know they're full of BS? If you're an alcoholic and you've made it through the day, it's huge, man. It's huge. I walk into my home group and all of a sudden everybody knows something's not right. And they all come up to me and say, how you doing? What do I tell them? Fine. I'm not going to talk with Dave there because he'll tell on me. I don't say a word during the meeting. We go back to the federal building. I jump out of the car, and Dave says, oh, excuse me. I say, excuse me? He says, would you be my sponsor? Of course, I said, yes, because I figure I'll use him now. Of course. He'll write a nice letter to the judge. Next day, I get a call from the FBI. Now, that's like shock treatment for me. I jumped 15 feet in the sky. You know what it was? Dave checking in. We had to. I told him, you're going to kill me, man, before my trial. Then what happened was, the next day, Dave says to me, I'm pulling off the case. I said, excuse me? He said, I'm pulling off the case. I said, why? He said, because if they find out I'm talking or communicating with you, they'll jeopardize the whole case against you. Will you still be my sponsor? So my head said, no way, man, are you nuts? Of course I said yes. I want to tell you about the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous and the fellowship and the power that's in these rooms. We ended up going to court. I pleaded guilty because I was guilty. And everybody else had gone to trial. They all lost. We all got sentenced the same day. Everybody in front of me got sentenced to 45 years in prison. Well, if you just add it up, chances are so am I. You know what I mean? And I was the last guy to get called. The room was packed, and I want to tell you what we did, you did for me. The morning of my trial, there were hundreds of you that showed up, people I knew, people I didn't know, just alcoholics that were willing to support another alcoholic who just wanted to stay sober for another day. You walked with me, you held my hand, and then you did the Lord's Prayer with me outside the courtroom before we went in. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. And when it was my turn and they called my name, my sponsor was on one side, my mother was on the other. And I'll never forget those words that my sponsor, Al, who I love to death, whispered in my ear that morning in that courtroom as they called my name to be sentenced to go to prison. And only Al could get away with this. Al said, hey, Mark, the game of life when you're sober is rigged. It's like playing with loaded dice. You can't lose. God cheats in your favor always. I stood up. I figured rice, dice, loaded. What is my sponsor talking about? I'm going to prison. Al's rice and dice. You loaded, man. You're gonna, Jesus. So I get up to that judge. I want to tell you about that judge. That judge is still on the bench today. He's a federal judge, and I love him. They've been trying to throw him off for 30 years. He's a racist. He's a bigot, and I love him. He sentenced me to 5 years in prison. And before he did that, he said, young man, do you have anything to say? And I turned around and I get a tear in my eye and I just get touched every time I think about this. I thanked everybody in that room for my life. And all of a sudden, these two deputies came up, and I know the routine. I'm going to prison. I just got sentenced to 5 years. I thought I just got off. I mean, it was a miracle. I only got 5 years. And the deputies came up on both sides, and I just had my hands like this, and all of a sudden, the judge started to talk. Now, my case was not drug and alcohol related, I'm here to tell you. And 15 minutes later, after he lectured me about drugs and alcohol, he suspended my sentence. He said, young man, I have never done this, and I've been on this bench for over 25 years. You belong in prison. Do you understand? I said, yes, sir. Now, I had just been relieved from going to federal prison. And then he started saying what my sentence was. He said, young man, for the next 5 years, you can drink no alcohol, smoke no dope, take any illegal pills, stick, stuff, anything. And I'm going to test you every single day. And if I catch you once, you're going to serve the whole term. Do you understand? And I'm here to tell you how sick of a guy I really am. I'd just been relieved, like I said, of going to federal prison. And you know what my head said to me? Who do you think you are telling me I can't drink? And then he did the worst thing you could do to an alcoholic of my type. You know what he did? He sentenced me to AA for 5 more years. That pissed me off, man. And I walked out of the courtroom a free man. I was on federal probation. I couldn't leave the county of LA, couldn't go to any gambling spots. And it was just not, but you know what? When you're sober like I was, it was easy. It was an easy thing to do because I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I went to a lot of meetings, and now I'm still taking Dave to meetings, you know? This is like classic. So 3 years after that, I got kicked off for probation. And 2 years thereafter, by the grace of God and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and your experiences before me, I received a presidential pardon. That's unheard of for a guy like me. And the biggest miracle of it all, for me, is Dave, Dave, that FBI agent? 4 months ago, I gave him a 12-year AA birthday cake. And that's why it's so important, because my primary purpose today is to stay sober, carry the message, and have fun. And I remember my sponsor telling me, that's why it's so important for me to go to meetings when I don't want to go to meetings, because I remember my sponsor telling me, he said, Mark, you're a VIP. And VIPs in AA only have to go to 1 meeting a week. I thought, Al's the greatest sponsor in AA. He said, but for a nut like you, you don't know which meeting you're going to need, so you better go every day. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're new here tonight, I strongly suggest there are a lot of wonderful people in this room. This is the Marina Center is just a wonderful place to get sober and stay sober. And if you're new here tonight, I hope you get a lot of phone numbers. Hang out with us. I want to tell you the journey for me. Alcoholics Anonymous is, for me, is the language of the heart. It's like here I get to walk in the sunshine of the Spirit. If I don't quit 2 minutes before the miracle and I ask you and tell you how I'm feeling, and I just ask for some help, I know you'll always be there for me. And if you're new here tonight, I hope you reach out and get some phone numbers. The worst that will happen is what's happened for me. Your life will get good, and that might piss you off too. You know what I mean? And again, I hope tonight, when in your prayers, you'll say an extra prayer for Wayne and his daughter. And if you're new here tonight, and if you're not here tonight, and if you're not new here tonight, and no one's told you yet, and no one's told you yet today that they love you, I want to tell you I love you and thank you for loving me. Thank you for my life.